This episode of Analog Resurgence brought to you by Skillshare. Stick around after the video to learn more. Film is physical, which means it can be hurt, damaged, stretched, torn, burnt, and the memories and stories that live on the film can be lost forever.
Out of all the films made in America, the silent films, only 15% of them exist. All the rest are gone, lost forever. Out of all films made from the turn of the century right up until today, only 50% exist.
That period of time is the dawn of motion pictures, a period that wasn't just full of technical achievements, but one of possibility and experimentation. So how does a film get lost? Long before a movie could be backed up onto a stack of hard drives to ensure that every single frame of raw footage was being safely stowed away, movies were shot on film. Think of film as a living, breathing material. It needs to be stored well and handled carefully in order to protect the images that are captured on it. Today, there are enormous efforts around the world dedicated to film preservation and restoration.
We've got over 1 million pieces of material. Around the world, we've got over 3 million pieces of material.
But in the early days of cinema, that wasn't much of a concern. When a film is lost, like really truly lost, it means that no copies of it exist anywhere. It's just gone. Any negatives or prints or any copies that were ever made to even prove that this thing existed are no longer around for people to watch. There are films that were lost during world wars, vast archives that have perished in fires, and movies that are gone simply because no one even cared to save them at the time. The 1939 Filipino feature Secreto de Confesión was lost during World War II, when all copies were destroyed during the bombing of Manila. And that's just one of countless films that were lost during World War II alone.
Nitrate film is comparatively strong, but it has the disadvantage of being highly inflammable.
In the early days of this medium, film was made using potassium nitrate. For decades, nitrate film was used to shoot movies despite the danger that it created. Nitrate-based films are inherently unstable and will deteriorate in temperatures around 70 degrees Fahrenheit and humidity greater than 50%. While deteriorating, these films give off potentially flammable fumes. Nitrate films are a danger because of their ability to spontaneously combust.
Nitrate film has the basic same chemical compound as gunpowder and is highly flammable. A nitrate fire is like nothing you have ever seen, because it's almost like a controlled explosion.
In 1929, reels of nitrate film caught fire at the Glen Cinema in Paisley, Scotland. This resulted in a death toll of 71. In 1937, in the town of Little Ferry, New Jersey, the perfect storm of decaying film, high temperatures, and poor ventilation resulted in spontaneous combustion, causing the Fox Vault fire. This devastating fire resulted in the loss of most of the silent films produced by the Fox Film Corporation before 1932. Nitrate fires are difficult to extinguish because nitrate film produces its own oxygen while it's burning. When these fires start, they often claim everything in their path. The Fox Vault fire was a devastating moment in film history, but one that helped to put a focus on film preservation. The SMPE's Committee on Preservation of Film made fire safety a priority, acknowledging that emphasis is shifting from a consideration of preservation in terms of deterioration to a consideration of preservation in terms of film fires and film handling. In the 1950s, nitrate film was slowly replaced by acetate safety film, a significant step forward, but safety film was still more expensive and didn't hold up as well as safety stock, meaning that these movies still required careful archival and preservation, which they didn't always get. The introduction of safety film also didn't change the fact that a massive catalog of movies only existed on nitrate. In 1965, MGM Studios had a vault fire of their own, which again destroyed a number of older productions. Fires are just one of the many reasons that films have become lost, though. After motion pictures transitioned to sound films, or talkies, there wasn't a huge interest in immediately preserving all movies made during the silent era, and possibly the largest cause of lost films, intentional destruction. Studios would often recycle films entirely to save on space and to reclaim the silver that these film stocks contained. There was money to be had, so why bother holding on to these old movies? Universal International destroyed its remaining silent film copies in 1948, and those studios who opted to keep the material around usually did so cheaply and poorly. Once the silent era gave way to sound, most studios put their silent film reels into storage. But looking back now, we see that a huge portion of film history is lost to time. Whether by freak accident or money-saving habits, there are thousands of films that no one will ever see again, and that that's an enormous lost legacy for the people who made them. Many of these lost films we only know about because of on-set photographers who would document behind the scenes. Entire movies may be lost except for maybe a publicity shot or a behind-the-scenes still that was captured on a large format camera. Like this still from the 1919 adaptation of the H.G. Wells novel The First Men in the Moon, a movie that is entirely gone in terms of the actual footage. I can't even come close to naming a portion of the noteworthy lost films, and there will never be a complete list of all these missing works out there, but we do know about so many, and people who are searching for them as well. Of the over 500 short films that French filmmaker Georges Méliès made, less than half still exist. These might not have been riveting blockbusters, but they were often shorts that captured snapshots of life in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Hiawatha, the Messiah of the Ojibwe, possibly the first fictional Canadian film, is gone. Fairy Log and Radio Plays, a roadshow film that was also the first attempt to adapt The Wizard of Oz to film and contained an original score with it. Jailbirds of Paradise in 1934 that had the first appearance of Moe and Curly Howard before they became two of the Three Stooges. London After Midnight, one of the most well-known and sought-after missing films of all time. A silent film from 1927 starring Lon Chaney that was lost in the 1965 MGM vault fire. Heart Trouble, the last silent film from actor Harry Langdon. Actress Valeska Surratt acted in 11 silent-era films, all of which are gone today. Likely the only film of her left is some personal home movie footage that still exists. Alamara, the first talkie in India made in 1931, is gone, a significant milestone in India's film history. And in 2003, there was a fire at the National Film Archives of India, which resulted in more lost films. Today, there are ongoing efforts to find and restore films from the past because of the significance that they hold.
We have negatives in our vaults that are over 100 years old. Things come into us that have been in barns and warehouses and people's attics and basements.
We found the original nitrate negatives and we took them and we created a new answer print and a new restoration master.
Lost films have been found in film labs, vaults, barns, attics, films that were stowed away over the years and now sit forgotten until someone happens to find and identify them. The 2016 documentary Dawson City, Frozen in Time tells the story of how over 300 silent-era nitrate films were discovered in 1978. These films were sent to be shown in the remote city of Dawson City and then never returned. In the 1950s, they were buried and inadvertently preserved in permafrost. In 1998 and 2002, portions of The Cook, an early Buster Keaton and Roscoe Arbuckle short, were uncovered, and a mostly complete version was able to be restored. The famous Fritz Lang film Metropolis was thought to be mostly lost for decades until versions were found in 2008 in Argentina and New Zealand, which allowed for one of the most complete versions of the film to be assembled. The 1954 A Star is Born with Judy Garland was missing nearly 30 minutes of footage that were cut. In 1983, portions were restored using original soundtracks that were found along with production stills to fill in for missing scenes.
What a nice day. Wish me luck.
Luck? You silly...
In the world of TV, we have missing and rediscovered stuff as well. Early Doctor Who episodes that were stored on tapes were destroyed by the BBC to save money, and that is an ongoing restoration project by people who have found footage and original audio to help rebuild episodes, often using animation.
What have you done?
Even the original Star Trek pilot only existed in black and white until 1987 when a color 35mm print was rediscovered. Slowly, these parts of history are being saved, but so much of it is lost for good. It's easy to think that maybe a lot of this stuff doesn't hold significance anymore, but it really does. Cinema as an art form has only been around for such a short period in the grand scheme of things that it deserves to be preserved, as all art forms do. In 2017, a short film from 1898 was discovered that depicts the earliest on-screen kiss between African Americans, and it doesn't depict them as racial stereotypes or caricatures, which of course dominated popular culture at the time. This piece of film runs only about 20 seconds long, but it's works like that which need to be saved and restored if they're still out there at all. Luckily, there exist countless restoration and preservation institutes and societies and efforts around the world that focus on keeping early cinema alive. And there's a lot that will never be rediscovered, but there's a lot that has been and is being made available again today. Especially with modern technology now and what's possible in the field of digital scanning and restoration, film can be transferred, cleaned up, and then preserved properly onto new film masters, digital backups, and tape masters.
We do film out a picture negative and we put it in our cold vault at the end. So we have a negative from the restored version as well.
The film, as it passes through the gate in the scanner, passes through a liquid bath. That liquid has the same index of refraction as the film emulsion, and therefore fills in the scratch and is not picked up by the scanner.
Stabilization, which in the past would have been accomplished by using pins to register a thing, that is now handled digitally.
Film as a format has progressed so far beyond nitrate film and early safety film and is now much better suited for preservation. But it does require care and space and proper temperature for long-term storage. It's a monumental task to preserve this stuff, and it's not always an industry that gets a lot of attention or funding.
There are 34 nitrate vaults down here. Every vault has 16 sprinkler heads overhead that would just completely flood the face of the cabinets.
We are storing high-resolution digital files as well as recording a new negative. We do both because digital files, while they are convenient to work with and they allow us a wide range of options, for an archival means, we still want a piece of film to put away.
This is our cultural heritage. It is very important to preserve the physical film, the 35mm film and the negative.
In 1997, Martin Scorsese started the Film Foundation, and since then they have restored nearly 900 films, which are made accessible to the public through programming at festivals, museums, and educational institutions around the world.
A lot of the older prints look gorgeous, but they were nitrate, so they don't have much time left. Also at that time, we discovered there was a new enemy, and that was the vinegar syndrome. And that destroys a film too, you see. Nitrate just disintegrates, but the vinegar syndrome destroys the picture in another way, melts the film. It's a very fragile medium, and it's disintegrating.
Today we're lucky to have many archives and institutes working to protect film heritage. There's the International Federation of Film Archives, established in 1938, which comprises 171 institutes in 79 countries. The Association of European Film Archives, an affiliation of 49 European national and regional film archives, and of course many individual archives in countries around the world. We're also benefiting from those who had the foresight to focus on preservation early on. MGM had their 1965 vault fire, but before that they were one of the few studios working hard to transfer their nitrate films onto safety film. As a result, the survival rate of silent films produced by MGM after its founding in 1924 is 68%, the highest of any studio. But there are institutions that are struggling to continue this kind of work. In August of 2020, the British Film Institute published an article concerning the Brazilian Film Institute, the Cinemateca, and the challenges they are facing due to lack of funding and government indifference, with a local film critic claiming that the government have zero interest in culture and memory and view any sort of art funding as a complete waste of resources. Since that article was published, there has been a fire as well as an employee strike at the Cinemateca, which leaves the future of the Institute and their work in doubt. We now live in a world where media is available on a whim, and things back themselves up automatically onto cloud storage or external drives. But every minute, an imperceptible amount of images and videos are being generated. Not to make the bold claim that everything out there is art, but it's interesting to think about what will be still around in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years at this point. Lost films that are rediscovered or family slides from the 1940s will still be viewable years from now. But what about all the things that only ever live on a cell phone or outdated storage materials? In the end, losing something is sometimes just an inevitable part of making something in the first place. But finding something that is lost, that's truly special. Big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video today. Skillshare is a massive online learning community that is dedicated to offering a huge variety of courses covering an enormous amount of topics so that you can explore and broaden your horizons and your creativity. Whenever I'm working with film scans here on the channel of Super 8 and 16, I use DaVinci Resolve for my own color grading, a program that is incredible, but complex. Through courses on Skillshare like Adam Schraby's color grading crash course in DaVinci Resolve, these skills and programs become so much more accessible for you to use yourself. Skillshare has no ads and is always dropping hot new courses for you to check out. So honestly, instead of wasting your time in film school like I did, check out Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to use the link in the description of this video will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium. Thank you all for watching this, and you can check out some information in the description about lost films and some of the institutes and facilities around the world that work to restore this stuff or find it, preserve it. You can also find information for supporting the channel as well if you're interested. And as always, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.